Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee. We have a number of important reports to consider this morning and anticipate we'll deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. I would like firstly to welcome Brian Mackenzie and Graham Fraser from HM Fire Service Inspectorate for Scotland, who will be observing today's meeting as they are currently undertaking an inspection of the Fire and Rescue Service in Dumfries and Galloway. Once the report is published, officers will ensure that members of the committee receive a copy of the report. So moving on to business, SEDERUNT and apologies. Tracy, can you provide the SEDERUNT and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 9 members present and 1 apology from Councillor Fairbairn.
Thank you, Tracy. Declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make at this time? No, thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting of 11th December 2018. Can we note the meetings held on 11th, the minutes of the meeting held on 11th of December? Noted, thank you. So on to business item 4. Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway, Local Plan, 12-month performance update, 1st of April 2018 to 31st March 2019. Report by the Director of Communities. Firstly, I would like to congratulate Craig McGoldrick on his appointment to the position of Local Senior Officer for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway area. Craig joined Dumfries and Galloway Fire Brigade in 2001, and members may know him from his previous role as Head of Operations. Whilst we are of course aware that it's a matter for the service to appoint our local senior officer, I would also like to take this opportunity to note the Council's appreciation of being given prior opportunity by Scottish Fire and Rescue to comment on Craig's appointment as LSO, and we're delighted that he now has this post. So members will see before them the performance report and note the new format and style which we discussed at the workshop in February. Craig is here to assist if members have any questions. Craig, is there anything you would like to add before we open it up to members for questions?
Thank you, Chair, members. Just really wanted to start by saying thank you for endorsing the appointment, obviously, and it is a privilege to be here to deliver this report. I certainly won't read through it. I'm sure that there may be many questions, and I'm more than happy to take them and answer them as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. We'll open up to debate then. Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Chairman, and congratulations, Craig, as well. I was looking at 3.10 of the covering report, and it's particularly with regard to the retained stations and appliance availability in New Galloway and Langham in particular. I'm guessing that part of the issue with these is possibly that folk no longer necessarily work where they live, so potentially it's that bit more difficult to get retained officers that are able to meet the requirements. But obviously with this being something of an issue, I was looking maybe to get a feel for the way in which cover will be provided, in that kind of 25% of the time, and how that's going to work, I guess, in practical terms. Because I should imagine that in either location, appliances coming from further afield are going to take a while longer to reach any particular incident. So just looking for maybe a bit more detail on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, if I could maybe just put a bit of context behind the availability, I think that might help set the scene. In terms of where we are with our own availability across the region, we actually sit the best performing area for the whole of the west of Scotland, if not Scotland outright. You're entirely right to pick up the challenges that we have at New Galloway and Langham, and they both are of very similar challenges. They relate very much to the daytime workforce and who we can call on and ensure that when we do actually class them as available, it's because they are within a reasonable response time and not out with that to create further challenges down the line. The actual figure that you see for New Galloway, like I said, to put that in context, for their daytime availability, it matches that of the west of the service delivery. So across the rest of the west of Scotland, that is the norm, that is the average. So albeit they've been through some challenges, they've still done an exceptional job to maintain that level. Picking up on how we've addressed that, that unfortunately was a reflection of a 3-month period at the start of 2018-19, and if you take the remainder of the figures for that year, they then take their availability back up to about 84%. So through that year, we actually saw the benefit of the service creating a new post, the Rural Full-Time Watch Manager post, which, as you know, offered a wee bit more resilience to the area. That individual is now on a roaming contract, if you like, and they will provide supplementary cover at the stations who are down low to bring them back as available for their own town or that particular town that's challenging. So that's been well received and welcomed and has a positive effect going forward on overall availability. To alleviate your fears and to reassure you that daytime cover is maintained in cluster stations, so have areas that we will never allow collectively to go bare. So we will have that. Yes, it may be an extended travel time, but it's still within a reasonable area of risk that we believe we can cover from the likes of Demellington, who might be across border, as we would see it from the D&G area, that they can come down and support, and we will mobilise CD. When we get to a position where we feel that there's a potential risk to the public, we will already have deployed a standby arrangement. So our 2-pump RDS and our multi-pump hold-time stations will be deployed into those areas to enhance that level of cover. So that would be how we'd backfill it, but it would still be reflected on the availability for that particular station. So although it shows as 75%, that doesn't take cognizance of the additional measures that we've put in place to ensure that there is cover.
Any other questions from members? Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Craig, and congratulations. Or maybe it's no congratulations, but I remember you and your predecessor, we discussed, you're normally first in the scene, before the ambulance, before the police, anybody, and there was a move to upskill some of your staff to a much higher level of first response in terms of keeping people alive, basically, until the paramedics and that could get there. And there's plenty of places in here, I think, where you could probably say, well, we could hang that there. Yes, maybe we could be a bit more explicit and actually say, you know, have we started that in Dumfries and Galloway, and how are we going to take it forward? Just before we go on, I don't know if I missed something, but did we actually formally thank Hamish McGee for his service?
I was coming to that later.
Thank you, okay. Right. So, sorry, Craig.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, in response to that, what you're referring to is when, as a service, we piloted out of hospital cardiac arrest, and we had a number of pilot stations, 18 in total, where we officially worked as a co-responder with the ambulance service and responded to deliver that service. That is an incident type that we have felt across the region, when we will always respond and deal with what we find, whether we are first on scene or whether we are arriving at the same time as ambulance. Going forward, that's probably the element coming into the second item of today's business about the strategic plan, where it's been proposed that will become part of our business through transformation. So the emergency medical response actually envelops that out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. So that's definitely a front focus of our transformation journey. It is a slight change in terminology, which might hide the fact that it's still up there as a priority. And as that goes forward, obviously there's a degree of work that's ongoing with our National Joint Council and our terms and conditions and our union representation to bring that together. But it's definitely a direction of travel that the service sees itself going.
Okay, would you see us in the position where some North American countries have actually got fire department staff who aren't actually firefighters, they're actually medical staff? Or would you just, I'm just looking to see what your vision for the future is.
A personal opinion, knowing the challenges that we have within our area to maintain skills, to ensure that we've got safe and competent firefighters, that would probably be a very challenging model to try and deliver in Dumfries and Galloway, despite where we currently are. So, personal opinion, that would be quite an extended journey to get there. The commitment of time to maintain such skills is probably out with the scope of what an RDS contract currently would allow us to do. So, whilst it would be great to see that as at some point down the line, it would be a number of years down the planning and the changes, I think.
Councillor Lever.
Just going back to what you were saying about the the availability, and you know, the 75% is above the national level. What's the gender balance with regard to retained staff?
I would have to come back to you with the exact figure for Dumfries and Galloway and that for Scotland. But we've just been through a recruitment process which has been very much focused around breaking the mould and the positive aspect of recruitment. So we are making inroads, and there's been a 2% increase in the recruitment this time round than there was previously for female applicants. So it's clearly having a drip feed effect. Locally, we have seen a greater percentage increase. We now have across the region, there's very few, if I think there's only one station that remains that doesn't have at least one female member of the crews, and that's changing year on year. So we are making positive steps for the gender equality.
Councillor Davison?
That's actually just been asked, thanks.
Do you have questions for any other members? Okay then, we shall move to the recommendation. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report for Dumfries and Galloway from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for the period 1st of April 2018 to 31st March 2019 as detailed in appendices 1 and 2. Are we content that we've scrutinised the report?
Chair, can we also note that it was the engagement process that took place that actually has made this, what could have been not a contentious issue, but it's smoothed the way for this to go through because of the engagement process we had in the workshop, we had and everything else to bring this up in the workaround area committees and everything else. So it's a commendation, I would suggest, of the style that this has been done. Reflects on what you said, of course, about the appointment of the new Chief Officer.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I think that's all been noted. Thank you. And just before we move on, Councillor Ferguson obviously mentioned Craig's predecessor, Hamish McGee. I think we would all probably agree that he provided an excellent representative for our subcommittee of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in Dumfries and Galloway, and with members in agreement, I propose to write to Hamish to thank him for his service and to congratulate him on his retirement, if everyone's happy with that. Okay, thank you. Okay, move to item 5, Dumfries and Galloway Council consultation response on Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Draft Strategic Plan 2019 to 2022, report by Director of Communities. Our Council's response to the Draft Strategic Plan for 2019 is before members today. Andy Reid is here to assist if we have any questions or would like to provide any additions or amendments to our response. Andy, do you have anything to add before we move it to discussion?
No, happy just to take comments or additions. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll move it to questions. Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 68. So that's 19. Or was it bullet point 19, I guess. So bottom of page 68 in the big box, where it talks about welcoming extended role for firefighters, etc., and must not replace the work of our emergency medical responders within the ambulance service. But I think that's a very sensible point. In fairness, I don't think that that's the intention of it, but nevertheless, it's useful for that to be said. The ambulance service at one point was very proactive in setting up community first responder units. There were a number that were very active across the region. They have to an extent dwindled, I think in no small part due to operational changes within the ambulance service in the way in which these volunteers are no longer sent to calls that they previously were sent to. That I know from colleagues. I used to be a first responder. In my own area has been a concern, and I discover it with other groups across the region. Now, that's a matter for the ambulance service, of course, but it strikes me as being a rather curious waste of resource that they actually devoted time and effort to establishing in the first place. It's the reason, incidentally, that I'm not at all surprised about the prospect of firefighters also being tasked with out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, because it wouldn't be the first time that we've had to call the fire brigade as first responders to let them afford us entry to a house where someone has collapsed and haven't been able to get in through the door. So it's simply an augmentation of something that was already happening in practice. However, to draw that preamble to a close, I wonder whether it might be reasonable for us to add a subsequent line: must not replace the work of our emergency medical responders within the ambulance service or community first responder organisations. And I'd throw that out as a possible augmentation to our response. It's not a matter for the fire and rescue service, of course, because it's a decision or a sequence of decisions by the Scottish Ambulance Service. But certainly at this point, these groups continue to exist. They're hoping to be better utilised as they used to be than they are at the moment. And I just wonder if we maybe put that in as a minor amendment.
I certainly see it as a very well made point, Councillor Davison. Particularly, you know, we're keen to encourage community resilience. So I think it's a very relevant proposal. Andy, do you have any comments on that? Or
No, happy to include the sentence at the end.
okay, any further questions from members? Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, it's the same box again, page 68. Some folk who know me might be surprised what I'm going to say here, but when you're at the side of a road or in a house or wherever it might be, and you're in danger of dying, it doesn't matter who does it, as long as whoever's there's been trained to give whatever aid they can. And this is my worry here, this looks as though this is a bit like a demarcation issue. That's not my job, that's an ambulance driver's job, or a paramedic's job. It's whoever there at the time to preserve life, because it's it'd be the police, it'd be the fire brigade, even another car driver. You know, you're expected to do what you can to keep people alive, if you've got the knowledge. So I'm a wee bit worried about that there. And like Rob's saying, there's a significant number of first responders, volunteers out there, you know, the mountain rescue guys, stuff like that. You know, where does it end? I've got a concern about that paragraph.
So are you proposing an amendment, Andy?
Well, I don't think it's in the Dumfries and Galloway Council's gift to say we must not replace the work of our emergency medical responders within the ambulance service. Given more than likely that the first in the scene is the fire and rescue service or the police or then the ambulance. So I don't think the intention is to replace anybody. It's to enhance the role they have.
Derek, do you want to come in on that?
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. I wonder if two issues, I think. The specific issue in terms of the paragraph, if we were to replace with complement, that might address the issue in members' hands. Secondly, I think the bigger issue that both yourself and Councillor Davison have raised is in relation to the role of community responders. The impetus that was behind that, I think we're all aware, is possibly not as significant as it was 2 or 3 years ago, and therefore I think in our council plan we have a clear commitment to ensure that we do everything within our gift to support the volunteers and community organisations in relation to first responders. So I think in the September Communities Committee we'll be reporting on progress on the council plan, so that's maybe an opportunity to advise members of where we are across the region, and therefore we can take a comprehensive approach to this. So happy to be guided by members, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Rob, do you want to come back in?
Mr. Crichton had been, as always, much ahead of me in the change of word he was suggesting.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. It's the last paragraph again. My understanding was the control rooms have been out with the region for some time. This isn't a new development. So it makes it read there as though it is. It's a bit misleading.
Andy?
Trying to recall it, the plan, there's reference in the plan to the review of the control rooms within the strategic plan about the change of how they deliver the service. All we're doing is emphasising that once they were taken away from the region. We're emphasising that we want to maintain that service. We can rejig the wording if you want it to be, sort of reflect the wording within the strategic plan.
Actually, my suggestion maybe I should just take out what you're looking at with the region. Just the control rooms must be effective in providing timely and accurate information to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, because they already are outside the region. I've been for some time.
Okay, so we're proposing deletion of the words which are located out with the region. Is that right, Andy?
I think they're superfluous actually, because it's a moot point, because they are already out with the region. So there's not some of them; they're all their emergency control room is outside the region. Has been, whether it's in the current location or another location, it has been for some time.
Councillor Lever.
Could we not just insert the word now? So control rooms which are now located out with the region, so it recognises that they are no longer within the region.
Councillor Blake, you want to come in?
Yes, it's now about context. It was some time ago. It was during the previous discussion on the paragraph. Where it says must not replace, surely it could just simply said and should be seen to enhance, and leave it as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Are we content with the proposal from Councillor Blake to refer to enhancing rather than removing? Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions on the consultation proposals? Okay, thank you very much. So, subject to the amendments that we have discussed, move on to the recommendation. Members review and agree the draft response at Appendix 2 as the Dumfries and Galloway Council response to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service draft strategic plan. Have we agreed on that? As amended, yes, of course. Okay, we'll move then to item 6, Police Scotland Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan, 12-month performance update, 1st of April 2018 to 31st March 2019. Report by Director of Communities. Would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Linda Jones on being appointed as Divisional Commander for V Division. Members will be aware that Linda was Acting Chief Superintendent following the transfer of the previous Commander, Gary Ritchie, and I'm pleased that she's now been made substantive in this role. Linda is here to respond to any questions members have on the report. Linda, is there anything you would like to add before we move to questions?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to all the members. I would say it's generally a positive report this morning. Just a couple of areas I'd like to highlight, if that's in order, Chair. The continued high detection rates for violent crime, and also it's welcoming to see the decrease in antisocial behaviour across the area and the reduction in road deaths. We continue to have our challenges, and they are at the moment the continued increase in sexual crime, which is no different from any other area in the country, but is particularly challenging as over 75% of our serious sexual crime is non-recent and is historical in nature, which has its challenges in terms of ongoing detections. But gives me confidence that the community has the confidence in the police to report these crimes going forward. We've also seen an increase in shoplifting, as you'll see in the report, and we're looking at that in terms of our local town centre officers, because it seems to be that Dumfries is the main area that has been targeted, the town centre. But I'm happy to take any comments, observations on the report.
Thank you, Linda. So, move to questions. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Just when Linda mentioned shoplifting, obviously is an issue in the Dumfries town centre. I know in some other areas like Carlisle have been having a lot of problem with shoplifting and that. Are you working closely with the retailers on that and the Dumfries shopkeepers and the community safety team? Because I know in Carlisle they're doing a sort of lookout call within various shops. There's gangs working. They're coming up the street and we know who they are. So how much surveillance are you doing in this?
Thanks, Councillor. And you'll probably see in the report that our detection rate is 80% for shoplifting, which is particularly high. And that's because of the work we are doing with the premises that are being targeted, that we're getting an early and quick update from the stores via the radio link or via the town centre officers, that we're able to work closely with them and catch the perpetrators. The problem, for instance, is in the last 2 days we've had 12 separate shopliftings in the town centre. And it's the same people that are committing the crimes, but we can only do what we can do, put them to court, and unfortunately they're back out with us in the community the next day. But we're working very, very closely with the town centre staff in the stores, but that's probably why our reporting has increased, to be fair.
Thanks. I know when I was over in America a few weeks ago, that they certainly didn't have a problem with shoplifting. If there's any repeat fines and any repeat sort of instance of shoplifting or any other causes of trouble, they're certainly dealt with a lot harder than here.
I don't think there's an answer to that we can record. Councillor Lever?
Just with regard to 310, where it says with regard to drug supplies reduced but possession has increased, and then in page 82 it says about 2 groups who have an impact in the region were completely dismantled. Does that mean that other groups are actually moving in to fill the void which has been created by that? And were the 2 groups who were completely dismantled, were the groups out with the region?
So the 2 groups that were dismantled, 2 main perpetrators are now serving custodial sentences, and that was why our drug supply offences were higher last year. There is no lack of activity, even though the drug supply charges are down this year. It's not because of lack of activity. That is why the possession charges are up. But when we execute a drugs warrant, we can't determine what we're going to find behind the door, whether it will be possession or supply charges. We are always collating intelligence in terms of new groups moving into the area, and we're always keen for the community to help us with that intelligence, and we'll react to that, and any new groups we see forming in the area will be dealt with accordingly.
Councillor Lever?
Just another query, and I've raised this before. You've got very good detection rates on those crimes, but that doesn't tie up with conviction rates. And I know it's out with your responsibility as the CPS with that. But I mean, there must be some way of marrying the 2 together. There's no point in having a high detection rate like there is with rape, for example, but you have a very low conviction rate of it. You don't. We have a very low conviction rate at the end of the day. So how do we marry up this set of figures with the set of figures in terms of convictions for crimes?
It's a very difficult one, Councillor. We can certainly, collate the evidence, submit the reports, but we can't influence Crown in terms of convictions. So I wouldn't be able to comment further on that, unfortunately.
I'll pass it to the director in that case. Is there any way in which we can collate the 2?
Certainly not something I would want to respond to specifically just now, but clearly it's something that I'm happy to take back on behalf of the council. I think it's a very important point, so be assured the seriousness of it is such, hence why I'd rather give an informed view, having taken appropriate advice. But if it's the view of the committee chair, I'm certainly happy to progress that and advise members through yourself and the vice chair in due course.
Okay, thanks for that, Derek. Councillor Stitt, you got a question?
Just to follow up with what Councillor Bell says, I've every sympathy for the police, because a regular reader of the papers, there's 2 characters are never out of the courts that used to stay in the Dalbeattie area, and they've just moved on to Dumfries, and I don't think you get much help with the courts, Linda, to be honest. And I think it's a never-ending task with these 2 characters that I know of.
Thank you, Councillor. It can be quite frustrating for the officers concerned when, they're arresting the individuals, creating the reports, the individuals go to court, but hence is the cycle.
Thank you. Councillor Howie?
Thanks, Chair. More an observation than a question, Linda, but it's going back to old crime prevention days. 3 factors determine acquisitive crime. That's the opportunity, the risks and the rewards. Now, the assumption against custodial sentences of less than a year, I have never known a shoplifter jailed for more than a year. I think that's going to put pressure on perhaps struggling businesses which already exist. Now, I know it's out with our, anything we in this room can do, but it's just an observation that I think that will undoubtedly lead to an increase in these figures. And again, total sympathy for your position, because it's nothing you can influence on.
Thanks, Councillor. I take that on board, and I think going forward, we need to recognise that we need to probably do more partnership working in terms of diversionary for people who are committing these crimes, because the court isn't always the answer and isn't helping. I think out of the 12 I mentioned in the last 2 days, one of the offenders was remained in custody, but the rest were let back out in the community.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I do understand it would be difficult to influence the justiciary, but certainly as a police, when we were a police authority, we did have fairly regular meetings with the Procurator Fiscal, where we did, in fact, we could put some sort of concerns across to them, and they, in the main, took some sort of action where they would actually probably take a prosecution where in the past and we wouldn't. It might be something that we could look at in the future as a non-police authority, but as a police and fire committee.
Thanks, Ian. I think that's worth definitely considering to look into that. Thank you. Councillor Linda, do you want to come back on that?
Just to give you a wee bit of reassurance that we do have a regular meeting with the Fiscal Service, Lindsay Hunter, every couple of months, and we discuss, that there are things like bail conditions that can make a difference that we discuss, and she is very supportive as far as she can be.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. It's kind of been asked and answered. Two things, actually. One is there needs to be a very clear delineation between a reporting authority and a sentencing authority. And we're not in a position, and nobody's in a position to lobby the sentencing authority what should happen. So I think we just need to be careful. And I'll leave that in Derek's capable hands to bring something back for us. The bit, Linda, that it kind of contradicts itself, unless I'm misreading it, is that I don't know if you've got Andy's report on page 77. It's got the third 3.10, the bullet point, page 4 of the appendix highlights a reduction in drug supply, production and cultivation, down 14%. However, drug possessions have increased by 33%. Does that mean, is that drug possession convictions or interventions have increased by 33.5%?
So it's a drug possession that has increased by 33.5%, which is when we have someone with a small amount of drugs on them. For a drug supply charge or a cultivation, we would need larger quantities. Does that help, Councillor?
It kind of does, Linda, but it actually rings alarm bells, because if we've got a whole raft of people with small amounts, what's the bigger problem? A small number of people with a lot of quite substantial amounts, or is the problem spreading? Is one possible scenario, and I'm just kind of interested in what your take is on that.
No, I wouldn't say the problem's spreading, and a lot of our possession charges actually come from some of the festivals where we have an operation to target the drugs at the festivals. I think it is a healthy increase to show that there is a lot of activity round about, people in possession of drugs, and we very much rely on our intelligence. We could have 3 different lots of intelligence about drugs possession, which would allow us then to move forward to obtain a warrant, which could lead to drug supply charges going forward.
Actually, because what we're picking up is increasing incidents of discarded needles, which was a real problem a few years ago, and we kind of got a handle on that. Yeah, my worry here is this is a new wave, right? Because the increased finding of stashes of used needles is worrying, particularly in play areas where kids and that are.
Yes, I agree, Councillor, that is worrying, and we are working with the community safety officers in our joint patrols to pick up in any of these areas that are causing the concerns. But just to give you reassurance, these figures don't indicate to me that the problem is increasing in the area.
Councillor Lever.
I'm not really contained within aspect of the report, but you know, as a council, we're facing major problems with budgets and having to continually cut services year on year. What's the situation with regard to the local police budget? I mean, on page 47 of the Fire and Rescue report, it says that their cumulative target savings of 328 million by 27-28. So, what is the impact locally in terms of budget cuts?
Yeah, we're all experiencing problems with the budget at the moment. Personally, I haven't had to take any cut in my officers whatsoever, so it's not impacting on the local policing or the region at the moment. In fact, the police figures have actually increased over the last few months. I've got 10 probationers due to come to the division in the next few weeks, and that's due to Brexit. The Chief Constable's actually decided to up the numbers, so there is no it hasn't resulted in any lack of service or reduced service to the communities, but it's an ongoing pressure in terms of the budget for Police Scotland.
Thank you. Linda, I've got a couple of questions. It's just on what you referred to with the 10 probationers. And, you know, I think something that is important to us in Dumfries and Galloway is that there are employment opportunities for people living in Dumfries and Galloway. With my own background in police recruiting, I understand the difficulties that police have in terms of appointing officers to rural areas. Can you tell us the 10 probationers that have been appointed, without getting into any details obviously, are they generally from the Dumfries and Galloway area? And the other question I have for you on the report, there's reference to hate crime and offences detection rates, which are very high, albeit there's been a slight reduction this year, but there's no kind of context in terms of the number of hate crimes. Are you able to sort of flesh that out a little, just to get an understanding of the prevalence of hate crime in the region?
Absolutely, Chair. So in terms of the new probationers, I'm happy to say that all 10 of them are from the Dumfries and Galloway region, and that is why it's very unusual for us to get 10 at the one time. But when recruitment saw there was so many from the local area, it's actually put us above our establishment, but we'll come back down in terms of officers retiring. So they're all local, which is really, really refreshing for me, because it means hopefully that they'll all want to stay in the region out with their probation as well. In terms of the hate crime, I don't have the exact figures, but we actually discussed it yesterday. We've had a reduction in our hate crime in the last 6 months to a year. Every hate crime that is committed is discussed at my morning meeting and given a very high priority, and that's why the detection rate is so high. If it would be helpful, I could provide a further breakdown on what that hate crime actually looks like and what categories it fits into, if that would be of assistance, Chair.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, Linda. It's, as I said, it's simply about context and the extent of the impact that it's having on minority groups in the region. Any other questions? Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. Sorry to keep this going, Chair. Linda, I'm really pleased to hear about the extra recruits. What I'm really keen to hear about, though, is how long they're lasting. Right, you know, it used to be when you joined the police, it was a job for life. Doesn't it say? In some stations, a year was lifetime. But I'm just wondering what your retention rate is, or are you having to keep topping up because there's quite a significant number leaving?
In terms of new probationers, since I came into the area in April last year, so that's over a year, there's been one probationer who has resigned. There's always the fear that when they complete their probationary period, if they're not from the region, they'll be looking to transfer back to the area where they came from. But in the main, the majority like the area so much they decide to stay. There's always officers leaving through retirement or ill health. So it's constantly topping up, as you say, Councillor, but the majority of our probationers I have no issues with. As I say, one resignation in the last year and a bit, I think, is quite healthy.
Councillor Stitt.
Don't know if you'll be able to answer this or no, Linda. Page 82, under the drugs, this cash seizures are £34,104.38. Does that come back in the area or not?
It does in some way, Councillor. I'm not going to sit here and spin you a yarn, so I'll take that away and get a comprehensive update for you. You've managed to catch me out with that one.
Councillor Blake.
Just going back to Councillor Stitt's comment, again, going back to when we were a police authority, we had a long discussion with the Justice Minister, Kenny McCaskill, at the time, who was really dead set against postcode benefits from proceeds of crime. Obviously, we have a significant seizure with the M74 going through it, and we were trying to entice some of that cash back in, but that was the feeling of the Scottish Government at that time, but maybe my colleagues that are involved with the Scottish Government may know better.
Okay, we'll just leave that one out there.
Because I was actually going to ask Linda Doogie if how much money comes into the region. Isn't it being raised in Dumfries and Galloway? Because I think it's a bigger picture of the cash back from crime payments are quite substantial for Dumfries and Galloway. From a lot of that's raised elsewhere.
I'm not sure if Linda will be able to answer that question. Have you got anything to?
So I don't have the answer to that question, Councillor. I can certainly take that away. The proceeds of crime and the money involved in that has been an ongoing area for discussion for a number of years, and that's why I would just like to double check that before I commit to that this morning.
Okay, I think we've run out of questions. So it's a lot of good questions been directed towards you there, Linda, and thanks for your responses and the feedback that you'll provide. So members were asked to scrutinise a performance report for Dumfries and Galloway from Police Scotland from 1st of April 2018 to 31st March 2019. We agreed that we've scrutinised the report. Yes, thank you. Moving on, item 7, any other items of business deemed urgent. I've not been notified of any urgent business today, so I'll thank members for their attendance and wish everyone a safe journey home. Thank you very much.